So, welcome to the news desk. I've been joined by Marshall Sutcliffe, one of our limited resources. I'm delighted to have you here, Marshall, and we have got plenty of time to chat. There's about 10 minutes left in round one, then you've got the 5 extra turns, then there's pairings, then there's seatings, then there's feature matches, and then we'll be back with BDM and Ian with all the action. But that means, Marshall, we get to go deep into the Magic Online data. We've got 5 color pairs. This is a world where we're not talking about shards, we're not talking about 3 color clans or 2 color clans. So really, we've got 5 lines this time around, haven't we?
Yeah, so basically everything revolves around dragons in this set, specifically 5 of them. And we get to sort of see how the top down goes from any of the dragon lords all the way down, and how that's affected sort of the nitty gritty stuff that like I love, right? This is the stuff that you know, real draft fanatics go freaky for, because like, you know, I see the thing on our schedule and it says we get to go over the Magic Online data. I'm like, oh baby, let's see, because I got all these ideas in my head, all these predictions and stuff, but this is hard data. You know, this is what's winning, this is what's doing well, and yeah, we get to bring that to you.
All right, so we are going to start with white and green, and that means we start with Dromoka. So what's the sort of overarching themes of Dromoka? So
white-green Dromoka is bolster. That's the keyword mechanic that you're going to see pop up the most often with this color pair. The question I think coming in was, is there a deck that you can make that is specifically engineered around bolster, and are there proper incentives to do that? Yeah. There is. You know, it's not entirely clear. We're going to get a better picture of this as we go through this portion of the presentation. But, you know, basically counters. It's all about +1/+1 counters. Bolster is an easy way to get it. It's incidental on a lot of the cards that we're going to be seeing here, where you're playing a creature you might play anyway. Hey, it bolsters 1. You're playing a spell you might play anyway. It bolsters 1. And you're going to see these things pop up over and over. The question is, how do you abuse +1/+1 counters? They're good on their own. They're good. You know, putting a +1/+1 counter on a creature is underrated and limited. It feels like a minor effect. It actually affects the board a lot more than you'd think. But the question really comes in on, can you really abuse it? Can you make those things fantastic?
All right, let's find out the cards that are being picked most highly in real-life drafts on Magic Online. Let's start with the DTK commons.
Yeah, so taking a look at these, Sandcrafter Mage, I'm not surprised to see this here on the list, and Pacifism as well. Sandcrafter Mage, very solid. Even if it's just your first play of the game, it's a 3/3 for 3. That is ahead of the curve in this set. You're beating down over Megamorphs, you're doing good work. Pacifism is one of the best removal spells at common that we see printed for limited. That said, it is not at its absolute best in this set, mainly thanks to Exploit, a mechanic we'll talk about in a little bit.
Right.
But it is still great. You're still taking it early, playing it every time. It's not like it's bad now. It's just taking a little bit of a hit. Interesting cards, though. Misthoof Kieran, you see this on the list here. This is a very unassuming little flyer. It just doesn't look like a whole lot. When you Megamorph that for only 2 mana, that's really, really cheap to get that thing face up. 3/2 Flying Vigilance deals a lot of damage in the air. Epic Confrontation is the bolster removal spell, basically. It kills a attacking or blocking creature. It lets you bolster 1, which is pretty strong. And then my old friend, the Stampeding Elker down there at the bottom, is, it has this is a joke that we use on the show. It's called keyword big.
Yeah,
it's got keyword big.
I had heard that you liked the Stampeding Elker.
I do.
So let's move on and take a look at the top uncommons that are being drafted in this particular draft archetype. So again, green-white is the pair, and these are 1st through 5th picks on Magic Online. That's very important. So it's not just what is being picked first, it's what's being picked 1st through 5th amongst the winners. Amongst
the winners, exactly. So taking a look at these, one that stands out is Enduring Scale Lord. There's a cycle of these uncommon dragons that also fit the same color scheme as their dragon lords. They're kind of their little buddies. And you're going to see these pop up a lot because they're really powerful. Now, they're not as good as the dragon lords, but you know, for limited, a 6-drop dragon like this one's going to do a lot of work. Underrated, Salt Road Quartermasters. That's a 3/3 for 3. We talked about Sandcrafter Mage. Looking at Saltwood Quartermasters, same thing. You play it on 3, and even if you play it on, you know, with nothing else on the board or with other things, it's a 3/3 for 3. That's really good in this format. It really holds its own, and then it's got this extra utility of being able to throw those counters around
with upside.
That's right.
3/3 for 3 with upside. Just think of that and go, why would I not want that in my deck?
Yeah,
well, you would.
Exactly. Dromoka Captain's a really interesting one there. You could easily envision Dromoka Captain coming down on turn 3 and starting to get the parade of bolster counters going on itself. Remember, it's a 1/1, so it can always pick up that first counter, first strike, then enabling it to continually attack. The thing that really you'll notice, though, is that there's times later in the game where that doesn't happen, and even sometimes early because Dromoka Captain is already outclassed, but combat tricks. Green and white is the color pair for combat tricks.
Right.
It gives us some of the best ones in the whole set, and you can pair them with the first striking, even just a 2/2 Dromoka Captain to start getting through, and once that train starts rolling, it doesn't stop for anybody.
Okay, let's take a look then at where we go in pack 3. So this is the combined Fate Reforged, the commons on the left, the uncommons on the right.
Yeah, so what you're going to see here is we have one of these for each color pair, and you're going to see kind of a greatest hits cards from Fate Reforged. Some of them go well into the strategy, like a bolster type +1/+1 counter deck, and some of them are just great. They just are. You know, Abzan Beastmaster comes to mind. It's just, look, you're playing kind of big creatures, put that thing in your deck, and it can randomly draw cards and draw removal. Temur Sabertooth in a similar way. Light Form fits that bill as well.
Sure.
But there are other cards that fit in the theme. Abzan Sky Captain, you see that one on the left. Sandstep Outcast can pick up a counter or just go wide. You can decide which one you want to do. And Sandblast being a solid removal spell. Again, you know, by the time you get to this pack, these are just kind of the desirable cards for this color pair anyway. The ones that fit into the strategy specifically are probably going to be a little bit of a notch above, but you'd be happy to take any of those in a green-white deck.
Okay, so that is green-white. That is the Dromoka clan. So we now move, we're going to keep white, and we're going to go to blue-white. It's time for Ojutai. Talk us through this, Mark.
So Ojutai's main mechanic is rebound, letting you cast a spell and then effectively cast it again for free on your next upkeep. So the question becomes, how do I abuse getting to cast a spell twice? And there's a few ways to do it in the format. The first one is just straight up value. You're just getting the spell twice. That can be really good depending on what the spell actually does. You see a prowess creature sneaking back there, Lotus Path Djinn. Prowess is only in Fate Reforged, but the ones that are in there benefit greatly from that. And you'll see kind of a modified version of prowess on a lot of the creatures that we see in Dragons of Tarkir as well, where they will also benefit from multiple times casting a similar spell.
Right, you don't see the letters PROWESS on these cards, but when you just tilt them in a certain light, that's clearly what's kind of going on.
Exactly. It's like, you know, the descendants or whatever of prowess creatures, the
alternate timeline version of prowess. Yeah.
Distant relatives.
Was a go, or was a go now but not now because now isn't anymore? I think we explained that very clearly. Good. Let's look at the top 5 commons then that are being picked in DTK for the Ojutai clan.
Now we see pacifism again right off the bat, same reasons as before for that, but here's one that's definitely a little unassuming but does great work. Ojutai Interceptor. Just a megamorph, but it turns up as a 4/2 if you pay it for 4, and there's this really beautiful sequence where you play it as a megamorph on 3, and then on turn 4 you play your land, you pay the 4 mana, you flip it up, and bang, you're hitting in there for 4. That is a very quick clock. Now, one of the cards that I'm still trying to get a feel for how the pros feel, I know how the R&D guys feel down at Wizards. I had a chance to do a draft with a few of them. Ojutai Summons, they think it's fantastic. Maybe one of the best commons in the set. I've had good success with it. I think it's solid. I think it's quite good. I'm curious to see where the pros come down on it, though, because it's right in the middle. You know, it doesn't have a big punch to turn you play it, but by the time that the whole thing's done resolving, you've got 2/2 flying Djinns. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's one of those things at 2 blue, you'd be pretty excited by it. At 3 and a blue, you'd be very excited by it. And at 3 blue, you feel, yeah, they've costed this very fairly, and I'm getting almost exactly what I pay for, unless that rebound does more than just give you the 2/2, and that's when
then it's over the top.
Right.
Yeah, then you're in. Yeah.
You know, where you've got your prowess triggers that are happening. You've got things that only trigger if you cast a non-creature spell that turn. Lots of those running around. And so rebound is kind of rebound plus sometimes.
That's
and
right.
it's when can you make it plus? That's where synergy comes in, right? That's
exactly.
Let's just not make 2/2 flyers. Let's make it plus.
Student of Ojutai comes to mind.
Oh, the 2/4, right.
That's correct.
As soon as you do a non-creature spell, right.
Game in life, yep.
Those are our commons. Let's go to the uncommons in DTK. What are people drafting 1st through 5th amongst the uncommons?
So remember when I said we were going to see these uncommon cycle of gold dragons pop up? Well, here's another one. Cunning Breeze Dancer. That thing closes out the game in a real hurry. And we noticed also that what we were talking about with that sort of pseudo prowess type thing right here, cards with rebound work really well with a Cunning Breeze Dancer. Silk Wrap is just a solid removal spell for the smaller creatures. And then one that I didn't think was going to pop up here is Aven Sunstriker. A little bit clunky, but really good with combat tricks. My favorite though, Youthful Scholar.
So this is the 2/2 for 4.
Oh yeah.
With essentially no ability while it's around.
Yeah,
it's just that it's meant to sort of not be around.
Once it dies, you get to draw 2 cards. If you've ever traded, if you've ever, block, both things die and you draw it, it's
block
just
your
like
4/2.
Yeah. Oh,
Filth.
it's so good. Yeah. And of course it works well in blue-black, which we'll be talking about a little bit too.
All right. In fact, why don't we take a look then at the combined Fate Reforged commons and uncommons for Ojutai? There you see them.
Greatest hits. We mentioned it a minute ago. You see the Misfire Adept, for example, the Lotus Path Djinn popping up. These are cards that take advantage of Rebound. You get to play your cards twice. You get 2 prowess triggers off of them.
All right. Now, you mentioned that it sometimes works in blue-black. That's where we're heading next.
That's kind of where I want to stay.
Yeah, well, let's go to black-blue and let's go to Silumgar. Silumgar is the clan, and the theme of this is exploit.
Yeah, exploit is it's sort of been deemed the value mechanic. It's the way to get ahead on cards, which you wouldn't think it would be. When you play an exploit creature, you can sacrifice another creature or even it itself to get an effect. But of course, that doesn't sound like card advantage on the surface, but it turns out that there's a lot of cards floating around, which we'll see in Fate Reforged and even a few in Dragons of Tarkir that actually aren't too bad to sacrifice at all and can get you some value, and the incentives are there. This deck is generally a controlling deck. You don't want to be aggressive with it. It's either mid-range or control, and it looks to not die early and take over the late game by drawing a bunch more cards than your opponent.
Let's see how we go about doing that. Let's begin with the commons in Dragons of Tarkir.
Yeah, this is awesome. So Vulturous Aven is fantastic. It's probably the premier exploit at common. Its friend the Gurmag Drowner also competes for the slot, but Vulturous Aven is the superior card here. And this is the really interesting thing you see, Rich. Palace Familiar, right there in the middle, that's the type of food that these exploit creatures want. That is the tastiest possible snack. When it dies, it draws a card. You can get in for a little bit of damage with it. And then you see Silumgar Butcher as well. Interesting also to note that the Ojutai Interceptor, which has really no synergy at all with this type of format, or this type of deck, still in there just because it's a good card.
Yeah, so Silumgar Butcher taking out a Palace Familiar and
something else.
Yeah, yes. Oh, and I got a card back.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right, let's take a look then at the uncommons in DTK.
So Youthful Scholar is the one that jumps off the page to me as really highly synergistic with exploit cards, but the best exploit non-rare is Rakshasa Gravecaller. You see it sitting there. That might be one of maybe the best uncommon in the set. It is unbelievable.
People sort of refer it to Grave Titan.
Yeah, it feels like that. Right. Yeah, you make a 3/6 and 2/2 zombies, and you can sacrifice your Youthful Scholar or whatever you happen to have lying around, and you've just got a board state. You've just got an instant board state, 7 power, 10 toughness, 1 card. Really, really powerful.
Yeah, that does seem...
Don't overlook that one.
Now, the only question I would have about that is we are in a field of flying.
There's flying.
And 3/6s, they clog up the ground. And 2/2s, they get to double block big things on the ground. None of those 3 creatures, none of those 10 power go anywhere near even a Palace Familiar that's pecking you in the air. So how big a deal is flying in this set?
It's absolutely massive. Blue-white is the premier color pair that gets it, but you see quite a bit of it here as well. And if you don't have a plan to either be faster than the Flyers, which you can be, they're not particularly fast, but they get the job done in the air, or to kill them, you're going to lose to them. There's plenty of ways for, especially blue, to keep your creatures locked down, even maybe temporarily, maybe permanently, and get it in the air with a bunch of damage.
All right, what about Fate Reforged then? If you are blue-black, what is that third pack going to deliver for you?
Food. This is where you're ordering up your Jeskai Sage. Great one to sacrifice to those. You see a lot of cards like that kind of popping up, and then again, greatest hits type stuff. One card though that I do want to highlight out of this list is Gurmag Angler.
Right.
Was already quite good. But now it's like the only really great Delve card for this type of deck. There's just no competition for it. And your first good Delve card in a deck like this is at a premium. It's fantastic. Your third is starting to get a little bit less good, but there just aren't any around anymore. So all of a sudden, Gurmag Angler is great. Big
Interesting.
fan.
5/5 Delve. That is your Silumgar clan. What if you want to stay black, but you're not all about the control? You want to get the game done. That means you want to pair black with red, and that means you want to go to Kolaghan.
Yeah, so you're dashing here. This is the Dash clan. This is basically an aggressive, fast deck that keeps your opponent really off balance. Because of the dash mechanic, they can think, okay, I've got this board state pretty well under control. Sure, I took some damage early, but I think I'm okay here. And then all of a sudden they go dash, dash, and you're dead. And they even put in a whole bunch of ways to accentuate the dash cards. It's really become its own deck now, where before it was like there were some dash cards you would have to consider. Now it can be its own thing. You know, you've got Warbringer and Ambuscade Shaman, which we're going to see on some lists later, that have really pushed that archetype over the top.
They certainly have. Why don't we take a look at the commons then in DTK for black and red?
So, removal, 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 and underrated Atarka Efreet. That's what we have here. So
right.
Black and red offers the best removal suite in the set. Together, they can take down everything from big things to small things. And Atarka Efreet, though, is one that I've been playing a ton of, and I think it's excellent. It's only 3 mana to turn it face up, and it becomes a 6/2, and you get to do 1 damage to something if you're a player.
So let me ask you about that 1 damage, because one of the things that the number crunchers do initially inside the building at Wizards, but then the really sort of hardcore, I was just trying to be polite. You will sit there and go, exactly how many times does turning up Atarka Efreet outright kill something?
Right.
And then in brackets, and how many times does it go on to finish something that you were able to deal some damage to earlier, or pair it with Hooded Assassin or something like that? So, so where does its 1 damage sit?
30 to 40% it kills something that you care about, which is great.
That's a great return.
Yeah, it's a great return. You know, Hand of Silumgar, 2/1 Death Touch, take that thing out. A Typhoid Rat. When you're playing a red deck and you can just, like, you know, kind of for free take out a Typhoid Rat, you're really happy. Remember, the damage can also just go to the opponent.
Right.
You know, a lot of people just attack with it as a morph. The opponent says, no blocks. You turn it face up, you do 1 to them, and then 6 to them. 7 damage that they just took, and they're like, what? And that was for 3 mana. You just paid 3 mana. The card's really good.
Let's look at the uncommons then in Dragons of Tarkir. What are the red and black players taking first?
So Swift Warkite, again, that cycle is ever present. It's very strong. But the 2 that really stand out for me are the ones I mentioned a minute ago. Warbringer and Ambuscade Shaman. Both of these cards, especially together, are absurd. They're both dash-centric cards. They make you want to play more, and really any dash creatures you can get your hands on, and they reward you heavily for it. Warbringer, I've taken 16 damage in a turn thanks to a Warbringer that I was not planning on taking. I'm like, I could take that 3 or maybe 1 dash, dash, dash. It reduces the dash cost of each of your dash creatures. It's not like a one-shot. So all of a sudden you could just dump your whole hand on the table and attack with all of them. If you have an Ambuscade Shaman as either part of that sequence or just on the board, forget it. You're taking huge chunks of damage. These are the 2 cards to look out for at the uncommon slot.
All right, now once we go into Fate Reforged, what does red and black get to gain in what is now no longer the pivot pack looking back to Khans of Tarkir, but moving forward with Dragons of Tarkir? What do we get from FRF?
More of the same. Goblin Heel Cutter is the premium common coming out of it. The rest is basically removal plus other dash creatures. Like, you can look at it like that. It's either has the word dash on it and it's playable, Vault Breaker, Mardu Scout, or it kills things.
Yep.
That's what you want.
That seems very straightforward. Our final
The deck is very straightforward.
I don't think it is. I think your choices on dash are actually really tough.
Playing it is difficult.
Oh, fine.
Its game plan, very straightforward.
Right.
Yeah, get you dead ASAP.
Fine. Oh, good. I'm glad. I was thinking,
no,
wait,
you're totally right about that.
I'm sitting there having all these really tough choices about, is this a 2/2 flyer or is it 2/2 flyer dash on turn 2 with my Reckless Imp? I think there are lots of decisions, and they come early.
Yes.
That's the fun bit. They come early in the game. Turn 2, turn 3. And if you can get a Calcisma Behemoth, I don't know what that wasn't doing on that list, because that thing's a beating.
People are still figuring that card out, that's why.
Okay, it's really good. I'm going to take you to Atarka, formidable, as they say in France, or formidable, green-red.
Right, so this is just the clan about getting big. Get as big as you can, starting with 8 power and moving your way up. Now, the one interesting thing about formidable versus its sort of predecessor from Khans is that it's on the creatures itself. right? We had Ferocious, which was primarily not on creatures, it was on spells that cared about the creature that you had. This one's a little different. The creatures themselves often have formidable abilities, yet also add to the ability to reach formidable. So it's pretty cool. They work pretty well together, and this color pair, it's very easy to get to 8 power. It really isn't that difficult at all. It's usually 3 creatures and you're going to be there.
Right, almost always, because there are quite a lot of these slightly asymmetric creatures. The 3/2, you think of Dragonsguard Bear, your 4/2 that becomes trample when it's got formidable. So it's actually really quite hard to put 3 creatures in red-green into play that don't add up to 8.
That's right. You're just going to get there, and look, the benefits aren't quite as sharp as they were for Ferocious, where if you were at Ferocious and you cast some spells, some of those were just completely over the top if you had Ferocious and very mediocre if not. But Formidable still gives you ample reward for being big.
All right, let's take a look at the top picked Dragons of Tarkir commons in this Atarka clan. Red and green is our archetype, and again, 1st through 5th picked.
So again, removal, Bowmasters, removal. Basically, you need to be able to get things out of the way to get your huge creatures through. It's a fairly straightforward game plan in that way. Airy Bowmasters took a little while to catch on, but now it gets the respect that it's always deserved. This is a card that you can play on 3, 4, or flip it up on 6, and you're happy at all of those.
Right.
The 3 maybe not as much.
Oh,
but
sure.
But the 3/4 reach for 4 mana is already slightly above the curve as far as what you expect to get out of that. And then when you flip it up, it's a 4/5 reach, which eats dragons sometimes. So very strong.
Reach is just one of the keywords.
You mentioned flying earlier. This is one of your ways to deal with it.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. Okay, what about the uncommons then for the Atarka clan?
So these are some of the powerhouse cards and some of the ones that are a little bit less, right? So Draconic Roar, great. Roast is a card that's probably the best of this bunch. I'm actually surprised to see Savage Ventma on here. I don't have that card nearly this high, but it turns out dragons are good in the dragon set. So
right.
there it is. And Atarka Pummeler is sweet, but again, Salt Road Quartermasters. Unassuming, right? It's a 3/3 for 3.
Yeah.
It's the one we talked about earlier, but you know what? That card gets work done, and it does it every time you play. That's why you see it on this list.
Yeah, if you are in particularly green-white and you go a 2-drop into Salt Road Quartermasters, it's very hard not to feel that you're significantly ahead.
Absolutely.
You know, they've put a morph down on their turn 3 and just, I'm so far ahead. I've got combat tricks. You talked about green-white having combat tricks, but we must finish off green-red. Let's not get sidetracked, Rich. Let's go to Fate Reforged, the commons and the uncommons coming your way in the Atarka clan.
Yeah, now again, it reads like a greatest hits type thing. The one card that does stand out though is Whisperer of the Wilds to me. You know, that is a card that can help you get to Formidable earlier by casting big creatures a turn sooner, and it also just tends to work well in a green-red deck because you'll often have Ferocious anyway. Otherwise, I mean, look, you know, are you going to play Hunt the Weak in this deck? Yes. Heel Cutter, yes. Dragonfire, yes. All these cards are just great. Pyrotechnics, probably the best card on the board there.
All right, so that is the information coming from Magic Online right now. If you want to influence that data, well, you know what to do. Fire up your laptop, get on there, whether you're Dromoka, Ojutai, Silumgar, Kolaghan, or you're red-green with the giant red-green Atarka clan. Have some fun on Magic Online with the DTK Draft Archetypes.